Hi friends, I am going to review the next 3 slides in our Civil War digital notebooks in case you need to check yours. We have just finished disc number 2 of The Blue and the Gray. So, who gets married in part 2 of the video? Mary and Jonas do, and we see that in the video. How did Malachi receive a promotion? If you remember this part, they thought he captured a bunch of the Confederate soldiers when he actually didn't, because he was marching them back. He basically just ran into them on his way back to camp, and they just said, "We have to surrender to you." So he brought them back, and it appeared like he captured them all. Luke receives a new assignment in the army as punishment. What does he have to do? He has to join the balloon corps and go up in a hot air balloon. And then what happened to him and Bear on their second mission? The balloon broke loose and drifted over enemy territory. Bear was shot and killed, and then Luke was captured as a prisoner of war. Okay. Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, so we see that at the very end. What did this executive order actually do? It did not actually free all the slaves, okay? Lincoln couldn't change that law. As commander-in-chief, he could take property from an enemy of war. This is what he did to set the slaves free in the states that seceded. There was still legal slavery in the border states, however, because they were still part of the U.S., and Lincoln could not take their property away, okay? So he didn't actually free everyone, but he did what he could to emancipate some of them. Then the fact or fiction box is just kind of fun. Was there really a balloon that broke loose and drifted over enemy territory? Yes, that really did happen. But there's no official record of what or who was actually up in the balloon and what specifically happened, but they really did use a hot air balloon, and one of them really did get loose and fly over into enemy territory. Did the Confederate balloon really look like patchwork? Yes, it did. They didn't have any way in the South to produce fabric for the balloons, so they had to use whatever they had on hand, and it was actually made from fabric bolts, of different patterns and colors and things like that. And sometimes they would even use women's gowns and sew those together to use those to make the hot air balloons. So that's just kind of a fun fact. Slide 19. This one's just kind of a fun trivia question. What percentage of Union soldiers were African American? About 10% actually were. What is an ironclad? So that's a vocab word that we should know. It is a warship that was covered in armor plating. And then if we look over on the timeline, we can see one of the movie connections of when Malachi receives his promotion at one of the battles of the Peninsula Campaign. Oops, I have a typo there. So that's where Malachi gets one of his promotions when he's hiding out in the woods, and he runs into one of the soldiers from the South, and they make a deal basically. And then when he's on his way back to camp, he runs into a lot more of the Southern soldiers who are surrendering. Slide 20 is the last one for the recap, because this is as far as we've gotten so far. Harriet Tubman served as a blank during the Civil War. She was all of those things. She was a nurse, she was a spy, she was a cook. As far as a spy goes, she helped people escape through the Underground Railroad to save some of the slaves that way. How many soldiers died during the battle at Fort Sumter? There were actually no casualties during that battle, which is kind of interesting because you just assume there's always at least some, but there were none at that one. And then true or false, Christopher Spencer received the board used to testing his repeating rifle as a souvenir after demonstrating it for President Lincoln. If you remember that at the end of the first movie, Christopher Spencer was the one who developed that new rifle to use where you didn't have to reload it every single time that Lincoln was shooting, and then he eventually gives it to Jonas as a gift. But Christopher Spencer actually kept that board that Lincoln was shooting at. If you remember, Lincoln asked him, maybe you want this as a souvenir, and he said, yeah, that actually really did happen. So he did actually keep that, which is kind of interesting.